Recently, there has been an outbreak of various viruses across mainland China, and hospitals are overwhelmed, affecting many children. One social media post shows a pediatric hospital's IV infusion area packed with patients waiting in lines for 6 hours. In another hospital, some parents arrived in the middle of the night to grab spots for their children, and the line was hundreds of people deep. On December 7th, the National Health Commission held a press conference reporting that acute respiratory infections are on the rise, especially among children under 14. Common viruses detected include rhinovirus, mycoplasma pneumonia, parainfluenza, adenovirus, and respiratory syncytial virus. In children aged to 14, the main viruses are rhinovirus, pneumonia, influenza, and parainfluenza. One parent posted online that half of the 30 children in her child's class were absent due to fever, headaches, and nausea. A parent from Tianjin shared that the children's hospital was overcrowded, with people wondering what virus this wave was caused by. Their child had a high fever for almost a week, but couldn't get an appointment and had to go to an expensive private hospital. Another hospital in Tianjin was described as being so crowded that it was hard to find space. The IV infusion area, even at 1 a.m., was so full of patients that it looked like a banquet hall with hanging IV bags. A notice from a Beijing school stated that the city is entering flu season, with the peak expected between late December and early January. There is also a higher risk of mild fluctuations in COVID-19 cases until mid-January. The detection rates for pneumonia mycoplasma and rhinovirus are also high. Some parents in Beijing shared that their children had caught 5 different viruses in just 1 month. A teacher from Guangdong reported that 2/3 of the teachers in their office had cold symptoms, and their sore throat felt as bad as their first COVID infection, with pain throughout the mouth, throat, nasal passages, and upper palate. Many parents shared their experiences online, saying they were exhausted from dealing with their children's illnesses. One parent mentioned that their child had been coughing since August, with no improvement despite treatment. Another shared their struggle with persistent nasal inflammation and ineffective antibiotics. A doctor from Zhejiang University's emergency department mentioned that even healthcare workers have been catching colds, advising everyone to take care of their health. A Chinese social media influencer warned that respiratory infections are widespread in Beijing, with children's hospitals seeing long lines and a high infection rate. Recently, multiple viruses have been spreading rapidly across China, leading to the deaths of several high-profile individuals. However, the Chinese authorities continue to cover up the extent of the outbreak, and the true situation remains largely unknown to the outside world. One key factor contributing to the surge in infections is the severe air pollution currently affecting China. On December 6, Shanghai's environmental authorities issued a yellow alert for heavy air pollution, warning the public to stay indoors as much as possible, especially for children, the elderly, and people with heart conditions. People were advised to limit outdoor activities and reduce the time spent with windows open. Many residents in Shanghai shared their experiences online, reporting symptoms like sore throats, blurred vision, and difficulty breathing. Some questioned the official reasons for the pollution, pointing out that even without the burning of straw or fireworks, the air quality remained hazardous. This isn't an isolated issue. On November 7th and 8th, a large-scale air pollution event hit the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei area, with Beijing and Tianjin both issuing orange alerts for heavy pollution. As of December 6, 27 cities and 7 provinces across China had issued heavy pollution warnings, with many areas, including Shanghai and Jiangsu, heavily affected. Statistics show that air pollution in China causes an average of 4,000 deaths every day. A U.S. Voice of America commentator noted the difference in how the UK and China handle air pollution. The UK acknowledges pollution and works to address it, while China shifts the focus from pollution to ecological disasters, thus avoiding responsibility. This highlights the contrast between democratic accountability and authoritarian governance. In response to China's persistent cover-ups of the pandemic, the U.S. government is preparing to take more substantial actions. On December 2nd, the U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Reform's Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic released a 520-page final report, following nearly 2 years of investigation. This report will serve as a reference for future pandemic preparedness, and potentially as a basis for holding China accountable. The report covers a wide range of issues related to COVID-19, including the source of the virus, vaccinations, public health guidance, state-level actions, and use of relief funds. Highlights from the report include gain-of-function study in the Wuhan lab funded by the National Institutes of Health, 5 strong pieces of evidence that COVID-19 most likely came from a lab in Wuhan, and that COVID-19 was caused by a lab leak. The report concluded that EcoHealth Alliance and Dr. Peter Daszak should never again receive taxpayer funding. The report is critical of many of the mitigation measures taken by authorities in the early stages of the pandemic, arguing that masks and mask mandates to effectively control the spread of COVID-19. For the 6-foot social distance guideline, the report criticized its lack of scientific support. Public health officials have lost the trust of the people. In addition, the report concluded that lockdown measures did more harm than good to the economy, the overall health of the American people, and the development of children. President Donald Trump's early international travel restrictions were credited with saving lives. This recent report is a significant blow to the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, which has been lying about the origins and spread of COVID-19. In addition to worrying about the high tariffs that President Trump may impose when he takes office in January, the CCP now faces the threat of accountability for its role in releasing and spreading the virus globally. In fact, Trump has been vocal about holding China accountable for the pandemic since his first term. On September 22nd of 2020, during the 75th UN General Assembly, Trump addressed the issue of the Chinese virus and emphasized that the U.S. was fighting a hidden enemy. He stated that China must be held accountable for releasing the pandemic to the world and that the United Nations must ensure that China answers for its actions. Trump also presented undeniable evidence of why China should be held responsible. On September 9, 2020, Trump mentioned for the first time that China had released something it shouldn't have, originating from Wuhan, spreading worldwide, and causing significant harm to the U.S. Before that, on August 23, 2020, on the eve of the Republican National Convention, Trump's re-election campaign revealed its agenda for a second term, with one of the key topics being the eradication of the COVID-19 virus. Trump made it clear that in his second term, he would demand China be held fully responsible for the spread of the virus worldwide. Trump's firm stand on holding China accountable likely stems from the powerful evidence his administration had gathered. The newly released report strengthens the foundation for Trump's pursuit of responsibility from China. Moreover, if Trump's administration moves to hold China accountable, it has strong public support behind it. In a 2020 online survey conducted by Vice President Kamala Harris, 90% of Republicans and 67% of Democrats believe the Chinese government should be held responsible for the virus's spread. On December 17, 2021, Trump stated in an interview with Fox News that China had ruined the entire world and should pay $60 trillion in reparations for COVID-19. He also believed China had exploited the U.S. economically for years. Earlier, Trump suggested that even if the CCP paid $10 trillion in reparations, it wouldn't be enough. What specific actions might the U.S. take in holding China accountable? Analyst Zhou Xiaohui believes that after Trump takes office in January, with the Republican Party controlling both houses of Congress, the COVID-19 Victims Compensation Act may be passed. This bill would strip China of its sovereign immunity, allowing for private lawsuits against the CCP for actions like concealing critical information about the virus and silencing whistleblowers. The bill would also allow courts to freeze Chinese government assets to compensate victims. Additionally, it proposes creating a special COVID-19 victims complaints task force within the State Department to investigate China's handling of the pandemic, including its use of the World Health Organization to cover up its lies. If the Chinese government resists international compensation claims, the U.S. would lead global efforts to force China to pay reparations. Congress may also pass the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, demanding China repay $1.6 trillion in special sovereign debt. American political scientist and professor Michael Beckley made remarks at an international forum in South Korea. His comments have gone viral. Beckley elaborated on how China's rise is over, analyzing the roots of China's economic decline, its far-reaching global impact, and possible future trends. Professor Beckley first pointed out that while many still view the 21st century as China's century, the 2020s actually mark the end of China's economic rise. He supported this argument with various data, showing that not only has China's economic growth slowed, but it's also beginning to reverse. According to official Chinese statistics, although China's GDP growth rate remains relatively high, more objective measures suggest that the actual economic size may be more than 20% smaller than the official numbers. Indicators like nighttime electricity usage and freight volume reveal that China's economic activity is far below expectations. Furthermore, China's economic productivity has been steadily declining, with the capital investment needed per unit of GDP increasing exponentially. He also notes a surge in debt. The professor emphasized that China's current debt level surpasses most developing countries and even exceeds that of many developed nations. Beckley pointed out that China once relied on abundant natural resources to drive economic growth, but in recent years, this advantage has significantly diminished. China's rivers have shrunk by half, and groundwater is severely polluted, with 60% of its water sources now deemed unsuitable for use. This not only threatens agricultural and industrial production, but also increases dependence on food and energy imports. Meanwhile, China's coal and oil resources are nearing depletion. As the world's largest energy importer, China faces mounting resource pressure, which has driven up the cost of economic growth. The professor particularly noted that the cost of producing each unit of GDP in China has tripled compared to the 2000s, with resource issues becoming a major obstacle to the country's economic development. An important driver of China's economic miracle was the demographic dividend. For decades, a large labor force supported economic growth. Beckley pointed out that in the next decade, China will lose 70 million working-age people while gaining 130 million retirees. By the 2030s, the ratio of working-age people to retirees will plummet from 15:1 to 2:1. This demographic crisis not only affects the labor supply, but also poses a severe challenge to China's social security system. The expanding pension gap could further strain the economy, and an aging society will become an unavoidable burden for China in the coming decades. As domestic problems worsen, China's foreign strategy is shifting from economic leverage to military and geopolitical means. Beckley described China as a typical peak power, a nation that rose quickly but now faces slowed growth and international isolation. Historically, such countries often choose to intensify internal repression while expanding externally to seek new advantages. In recent years, China's military activities in the South China Sea, Taiwan Strait, and along the China-India border have increased significantly. Beckley pointed out that China is conducting the largest peacetime expansion since World War II, with actual defense spending potentially 2 to 3 times higher than official figures. Military activities from the Taiwan Strait to the South China Sea have become more high-profile, including the construction of military bases and simulation of attack targets. These actions reflect China's growing reliance on military power to achieve strategic goals, especially as its economic tools have become less effective. Beckley believes that China is at a critical point in its decline as a major power, and warned that the 2000s represents a dangerous moment for U.S.-China relations. The international community must prepare for potential conflict. The increasing consensus among U.S. government and academic circles about the CCP's true nature is a devastating blow for the CCP. The Chinese government currently lacks the strength to overthrow the U.S., and this period is crucial for the CCP. It's a time when they believe they can overtake the U.S. through any means. If their ambitions and so-called strategic goals are fully exposed now, it would be a catastrophe for the CCP. Furthermore, the CCP not only faces immense pressure from the U.S. following Trump's victory, but domestically it is also confronting something it fears the most, an awakening of the people. On December 7th, a short video circulated on X showing 4 young women in traditional costumes playing gongs and drums, singing as they performed. On the chairs in front of them were several oranges arranged as offerings, and the entire scene appeared to be mimicking a ritual. The lyrics they sang were, "Thanks for the car inspection without violence, but now it's OBD cold violence. No one is buying houses, and now they're targeting cars. The common people are just poor. We're not fools. Even bicycles need to be registered, and second-hand cars are facing paralysis. We advise you to be kind. Angering the gods will cost you. Worse than pigs and dogs." In China, rituals refer to ceremonies held for the deceased, and given the high-pressure, strict control by the Chinese Communist Party, such an act of cursing the CCP and urging its collapse has become an extremely bold gesture. The video concluded with a subtitle saying, "Thanks for everyone's support, reposting after being restricted." This indicates that the video may have already been censored in China. The term OBD mentioned in the song refers to the new vehicle inspection system implemented by the CCP, known as OBD, Onboard Diagnostics Testing. This diagnostic tool reads vehicle data to check for malfunction codes. Previously, China's violent car inspection testing, which involved extreme tests like flooring the accelerator to test emissions, had already sparked widespread complaints. The CCP had abolished these extreme inspections and replaced them with the OBD testing. However, car owners soon discovered that OBD testing was even more brutal than the previous method. Many videos have surfaced showing car owners complaining that even if one malfunction code is detected, the car will fail the OBD test. The authorities mandate that owners take their vehicles to expensive official repair stations, and the OBD testing also includes stringent scrapping regulations, causing many 6-year-old vehicles to be deemed unfit for use. The OBD testing has sparked massive public dissatisfaction, leading to a slowdown in second-hand car sales. Ordinary citizens are complaining that the authorities are taking full advantage of ordinary people, forcing car owners to switch to new energy vehicles under the guise of promoting sales, even though people can't afford it. This policy is pushing them into a dead end. Recently, some netizens reported that authorities in the northern Jiangsu region have started door-to-door inspections of gas and electrical appliances, forcing residents to replace unqualified equipment, with a threat of cutting off their gas and electricity if they refuse. A netizen joked, saying that the next step may be forced car replacements, with electrical appliances set to be discontinued after 10 years, and even residents' savings being regularly wiped if not used. This netizen commented, "Don't think it's an exaggeration. They're totally capable of doing it." The details of China's internal economic situation clearly show signs of its decline. As the government has nearly drained the survival resources of its people and lost their trust, its ability to break through internationally is becoming more and more unlikely. Moreover, the CCP is very likely to face full accountability and compensation from the US government for COVID-19. The question remains, how much longer can it hold out?